recognize any of the faces shown to them. Emmett had no known history of hiring escorts or cruising the streets looking for hookups, and both scenarios seemed unlikely, though not impossible, at 8 AM. He also had no enemies to speak of. At least, none that he had ever mentioned. It's very possible that the passenger wasn't a local, said Phoenix detective Dominic Rostenberg. Other than the video, we don't have anything on him. Online sources are unclear as to whether Emmett's apartment and office were actually one and the same, so it's also worth considering whether the passenger was one of his private patients or someone he was helping in his spare time. As well as his identity being a mystery, the perp's motive is equally shrouded in uncertainty. The passenger hadn't stolen anything from the apartment, and Emmett's car was found 3 days after the incident, abandoned on 35th Avenue and Glendale, a rough area about 14 miles north of the apartment. Security guards had noticed it there the same morning that Emmett was slain, but didn't immediately report it. In the minds of investigators, whoever took Emmett's life did so for either personal reasons or for their own pleasure. Since Emmett passed out before he could tell officers the man's name or the purpose of their meeting, all we can do is watch over the eerie footage and speculate. The thing that strikes me, and many other viewers, is just how calmly the passenger leaves the scene of the murder. Almost as if he felt justified in his actions. Almost as if he knew he was going to get away with it. We can only hope he doesn't. But with almost 13 years having now passed, with no concrete leads to speak of, the odds, unfortunately, seem stacked in his favour. Meta Price Valentine, otherwise known as Mimi, was a 43-year-old mother from Fayetteville, North Carolina. A woman of faith, Meta was very involved with her local Deliverance and Praise Church of Worship on Owen Drive, where she worked as a secretary and choir director. On the evening of October 28, 2014, Meta attended a community watch meeting at that same church. Meta's pastor noted that she had been visibly fearful as of late. She would often ask fellow church members to walk her home, and would always mix up her route. It appeared as if she thought that someone was out to get her. That evening, however, Meta felt comfortable enough to make her way home alone. Surveillance cameras captured the chilling moment that she arrived back at her apartment complex on Sycamore Park. It was approximately 5:30 PM. The footage shows Meta heading in the direction of her unit. She pauses briefly and appears to focus on a car parked outside her entrance. She then picks up her pace, rounds a corner onto the breezeway, and exits the camera's field of view. At which point, a man exits that same car and sprints after her. That's the last anyone saw of Meta Valentine, but not the last that anyone heard from her. 5 hours after this footage was captured, at 10:30 PM, Meta spoke with her mother on the phone. According to her mother, Meta was speaking in riddles and very difficult to understand. The following day, Meta was scheduled to attend a Bible study class with family and friends. When she didn't show up, her loved ones attempted to reach her over the phone, but weren't able to get through to her. They immediately reported Meta missing. Officers arrived at Meta's apartment, but found no trace of her inside, nor was there any sign of a struggle within the property itself. From there, they turned their attention to the nearby surveillance cameras. After examining the footage, investigators were able to identify the man who chased after Meta, their prime suspect from the very beginning, Reginald McDowell, Meta's on and off boyfriend and the father of one of her children. In 1999, Reginald was arrested after he bound, gagged, and pistol-whipped Meta and her partner. In 2001, he was sentenced to serve 15 years behind bars, but was released early in 2011. Upon his release, he and Meta rekindled their relationship, but separated again in October 2014. That was 2 weeks before she disappeared. In the initial stages of the investigation, Reginald cooperated with the police, but this cooperation came to an abrupt end when he suddenly cut all contact with them and went into hiding. It wasn't until 2018 that the authorities formally filed charges against Reginald in connection with Meta's disappearance. Warrants were issued for first-degree murder, but Reginald was nowhere to be found. For nigh on 6 years, detectives have been searching for Reginald McDowell. He hasn't been in contact with his relatives in the Fayetteville area, including the son that he had with Meta. It's believed he's currently hiding somewhere in New York City, where he reportedly has friends and family. Meta Valentine's body has never been found. "We're getting close to closure, which is a great thing," said Meta's son, Demario Valentine. "It's just hard, because I always wanted her there when I got married and had kids, and I'm hoping there's still a chance that happens. There's been quite a few cases where people pop up years later, so anything's possible." At the time of her vanishing, Meta had dyed blonde hair and was wearing coloured contact lenses, a blue t-shirt, grey sweatpants, and flip-flops. If still alive, she'd be 52 years old today. A huge thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Modest Bulbasaur, Smilin' Jack, Alana Pons, Asia Mina, Azriel Warakai, Cass, Chief Gochuake, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Sai Wazal, Farewell Tattoos Jack Seffel, Gina Valera, Hamish, Ian Billock, Monica Mendoza, Peter Lodgerage, TNS Mum, Hamish K, Ellen Doloff, Itai Alon, Nephus 1988, and Lydia Cumo. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Until next time. The devil's in the detail. In today's episode, we'll be exploring 3 videos with chilling backstories. And though the mysteries surrounding the latter 2 have been resolved, I particularly want to highlight the first case, which remains unsolved. Not just because it's received so little media attention, but because I'm sure that someone out there must know who the person of interest in the footage is. Hopefully, that's one of you. Maintaining a good work-life balance can be challenging, especially when you're swamped with multiple projects. When I first started this channel, for instance, there never seemed to be enough hours in the day. But today's sponsor, Stamps.com, helped me to reclaim a lot of that precious time. Stamps.com is like a 24/7 post office in your pocket, streamlining all of your postage needs so you can focus on what really matters. With Stamps, you can handle mailing and shipping wherever you are, even on the go. All you need is a computer and a printer. They even send you a free scale to get started. Scheduling package pickups is a breeze through the Stamps.com dashboard, and they automatically tell you the cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers. It seamlessly connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart, giving you access to the USPS and UPS services you need, anytime, day or night. But my favourite thing about Stamps is the crazy discounts you can't find anywhere else, up to 89% off USPS and UPS rates. Whether you're a small business owner or running a multi-location organisation, sign up at stamps.com/Lazy Masquerade for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to stamps.com/Lazy Masquerade. Grand Prairie, Texas. A densely suburban and diverse city of about 200,000 people, nestled evenly between Fort Worth and Dallas. With a violent crime rate 45% lower than the national average, when it comes to settling down, it's considered one of the safer built-up areas in the Lone Star State. One man who fell on the wrong side of that statistic was Hop Van Wen, a single, 32-year-old Vietnamese American who lived alone on the 2400 block of Lancaster Drive. Described by those who knew him as a guy who lived in the moment, Hop was a fan of travel, fishing, fitness, and winter sports. Little else about his personal life has been revealed to the public. In the summer of 2017, Hop suddenly stopped responding to calls and messages from family and friends. Unable to reach him, his concerned loved ones contacted Grand Prairie PD and reported him missing. An investigation was quickly launched. Law enforcement asked local residents to be on the lookout for a 5'7" Asian male with short black hair, brown eyes, a scar behind his right ear, a half-sleeve dragon tattoo on his right arm, and a tattoo on his right inner arm with the letters TFT. They also noted that he was missing the tip of his right index finger. According to NamUs, Hop was last seen at about 10:30 PM on Thursday, August 17th, driving his white Nissan 350Z convertible on State Highway 161, just as he exited Lower Tarrant Road. His car was found abandoned and empty thereafter. Grand Prairie PD haven't shared exactly when or where it was discovered. In fact, the only clue they have released is a short video clip, one recorded by Hop's very own Ring doorbell camera. It was captured the same night he was last seen, and features a person of interest, or POI, whom law enforcement believe played a role in Hop's disappearance. As you can see, the Ring camera detects movement and activates. An unidentified subject is seen backing up towards Hop's door and covers the camera with a sheet of paper or a post-it note. The figure then sets about gaining access to the residence. We can hear the sound of wrestling as he fusses with the door. Though some people believe this noise is the POI inserting a key into the lock, others have pointed out that it could be the sound of a lock-picking rake. After the initial sound of the pins, which sounded like a key being inserted, you don't hear the cylinder turn or the lock click. You just hear more pins being manipulated. Then, after 5 seconds or so, he gets the locks and the door opens. After finishing with the lock, a faint beep can be heard. The door opens with a creak, and we hear the intruder speak with someone. It's not clear whether Hop was home at the time, or who the POI was addressing. Following this exchange, someone steps outside and fiddles with the camera. Just before the video cuts to black, a digital chime or screech can be heard. Did you catch that? There, right at the very end, another separate sound can just about be made out. Focus on that very last sound. This is the Roger beep, a tone often added automatically to the end of radio transmissions to indicate that the operator has finished speaking. Chillingly, it's identical to the sound heard in the Ring footage. That strongly suggests that the POI was communicating with an accomplice over a two-way radio, and not calmly chatting with Hop inside. Rewinding a bit, another beep or screech can be heard just before the POI opens Hop's front door. Some believe this to be the sound of a keypad, but going through Lancaster Drive on Google Street View, all of the homes appear to be modest, single-story buildings with conventional doors. As such, I believe that sound was more likely from a communication device brought by the intruder. In my opinion, this was a well-planned, well-orchestrated invasion of Hop's home. The POI knew about his Ring doorbell camera and came prepared with a paper covering. He approached the door with the confidence of a professional. He knew to use a radio device so he couldn't be GPS tracked, and he almost certainly wasn't working alone. As you can see, this video lacks a timestamp, and the authorities haven't confirmed whether it was captured before or after Hop was last seen. It's worth reminding everyone that Ring doorbell cameras are motion activated, and no footage of Hop returning home has been mentioned in any press releases. Based on that, and how confidently the POI acts, as if he wasn't expecting any resistance, if I had to make a judgment call, I'd say that the clip was filmed at some point after 10:30 PM, and that Hop didn't make it home on August 17th. With that said, it's best to keep an open mind as we explore this case in more detail. As mentioned, Hop was last seen at 10:30 PM, exiting Lower Tarrant, a thin stretch of road, approximately a 10-minute drive from his home. Again, the authorities haven't told us why he was there in the first place, whether he was meeting a friend there, or attending an event for example. So, let's get on Google Street View and take a look around. So near the entrance we have some greenery, lots of trees and a small field. A little further we have an unusual house, with statues of zoo animals in the yard. This small house here seems to be abandoned. As we go a little further, we reach the Grand Prairie Gun Club, a gated shooting range. The road continues a little further and leads to an obstacle course and a dead end. Here we have a third house. Beyond that is Johnson Creek. In all, it's about a half mile of fields, woodland and shooting lawns. Seems like an odd place for Hop to have found himself late on a weeknight. So, why was he last seen exiting Lower Tarrant that night? Was he there visiting one of the, frankly odd, houses? Had he gone to the shooting range, which is closed on Thursdays and never open after 6 PM? Was he doing a spot of late night fishing in the creek or nearby river? Had he taken a wrong turn so close to home? Or was he meeting someone in a secluded area for some unknown reason? The next question I have is, where did Hop go missing? For reasons already covered, I think on the balance of probability, Hop didn't make it home that night. We know his vehicle left Lower Tarrant Road, but did he head straight in the direction of his home, or did he drive elsewhere to meet someone? Moreover, how confident are the police that Hop was the person behind the wheel of his vehicle as it left Lower Tarrant Road? Is it possible that he went missing in this confined area somewhere, and then someone else drove his car out onto State Highway 161? Just food for thought. Naturally, we also need to ask why. Why target Hop Van Wyn of all people? Well, looking through Hop's now inactive Facebook page, it's clear he appreciated the finer things in life, particularly expensive cars and watches. As such, I've seen a few people suggest that he may have been targeted for his wealth, or at least for his perceived wealth. But I have to stress that Hop lived in a modest house on Lancaster Drive, whose residents are predominantly low income. In fact, the neighborhood is one of the most poverty-stricken in the entire US, with an income lower than 94.8% of the country. Though the police haven't confirmed what Hop did for work or how much he earned, I think it's safe to say that although he fantasized about luxury purchases, he wasn't actually a rich guy himself. As far as I can tell, no material items were reported stolen from the property either. That leaves us with two possibilities. That Hop was home when this footage was captured, and the POI came to target him. Or the POI had already dispatched of Hop and went there to get something. Something specific. Something that even Hop's family, and maybe even the authorities, don't know about. What that item could be is the subject of much speculation. My final question then is who? It's clear that Hop wasn't randomly targeted, and that someone out there had a reason to make him disappear. This figure to be precise. But who are they? Based on their physique and clothes, they appear to be a young male. You can make out the outline of his nose in this still frame, and from another angle when he presses himself up into the corner of the entrance. Here, it looks like his dark jacket is zipped up over his mouth. The subject also wore dark trousers, a white and black baseball cap, and possibly white gloves. Aside from that, it's hard to build much of a profile from this footage. The POI did a good job of concealing his face. With so little information to work with, some have questioned whether this could have been a gang hit. Proponents of that idea have latched onto Hop's TFT tattoo and his missing fingertip, questioning whether he was affiliated in some way with a Vietnamese syndicate, be that as a former member or someone who owed them a debt. Though I want to stress, that's all speculative. For all we know, the letters TFT were the initials of a loved one, and his fingertip could have easily been lost in an accident. All that's to say, this figure's motive remains shrouded in mystery. Despite releasing this video to the public, law enforcement received little in the way of new leads. They continue to seek information that could bring closure to the Wim family, who all believe that Hop was either abducted or otherwise met with foul play. Hop Van Nguyen hasn't been seen or heard from since August 17th, 2017. If still alive, he'd be 39 years old today. If you have any information pertaining to his whereabouts, or if you recognize the person of interest in this footage, please contact the GPPD immediately. You can even do so anonymously. All the information you need is on screen now. This was Christina Yuna Lee, a 35-year-old Korean American, originally from New Jersey. A creative producer by trade, who had worked on campaigns for the likes of Google, Twix, and Equinox, Christina relocated to New York in 2021 to work for the online music platform Splice. There, she rented an apartment in the 111 Christie Street building, a 23-unit complex situated in the Big Apple's Chinatown district. In the early hours of February 13th, 2022, Christina caught a cab back to her apartment after a night on the town. She was dropped off right in front of the main entrance. What happened next was caught on the building's internal surveillance cameras. This chilling footage shows Christina in her final moments. As can be seen, she enters the complex at 4:23 AM. An unknown male grabbed the door just before it closed and stalked Christina up 6 flights of stairs, staying 1 floor behind her all the way. There's no indication she noticed him following her. Christina opened her front door and stepped into her apartment, and the man forced his way inside with her, sealing the poor girl's fate. Minutes later, 2 other residents were awoken by the sound of high-pitched screams coming from Christina's apartment. "Help me," cried the voice. "Somebody call 911. The neighbors did just that, and officers arrived within 3 minutes. They rushed upstairs and could still hear Miss Lee's desperate cries from the other side of the wall, but frustratingly, they couldn't break down the reinforced door. The intruder had barricaded it. As they negotiated with the man inside, the screams coming from within the apartment slowly melted away and were replaced by a disturbing silence. A silence broken by a shrill voice from inside. "We don't need the police here. Go away." The voice was clearly that of a male, imitating a female. Following this, the intruder attempted to escape the apartment via the fire escape, but scurried back inside when he noticed officers on the roof above him. A tactical team arrived 80 minutes later and finally managed to force an entry. Inside, they found Christina in her bathtub, completely unresponsive and disrobed from the waist up. She was pronounced dead at 5:55 a.m. Her killer was discovered hiding under her bed. He was immediately taken into custody and identified as 25-year-old Asamad Nash, a homeless man who had never met his victim. And yet, in the brief window between Christina exiting her taxi and entering her apartment building, Nash had noticed her and made the split-second decision to butcher her. And butcher her he most certainly did. She had been stabbed more than 40 times with a yellow-handled blade which Nash had taken from her kitchen. "There was so much blood," said the owner of Christina's apartment building, Brian Chin. "My wife said I should call someone to clean it all up, but I'm going to do it myself. It's the least I can do for that poor girl." Brian knew Christina well. They had both been undergraduates at Rutgers and would often talk about their university days together. He described her as a wonderful human being whose smile lit up the room. In honor of her memory, he set up a modest altar outside her apartment door, an orange set up on a metal stool. A memorial made of candles and flowers was also set up outside the building, one which was vandalized several times by, frankly, sick weirdos. The perpetrator, Nash, was a so-called transit swiper who let people through the subway turnstiles for a fee. A career criminal, he'd been arrested at least 7 times since 2015 and was out on supervised release for 3 open cases when he took Christina's life, including for an unprovoked assault. He's also said to have an extensive record in New Jersey and had admitted to selling and using dust and K2, synthetic substances known to cause unpredictable behavior. He was under their influence when he first saw Christina. At the station, Nash denied taking Christina's life and claimed he was trying to help her. He believed that since he was only caught on camera following his victim, he couldn't actually be charged with her death. "She called me," Nash told them. "She was having a party, and she invited me over for a drink." During his interview, he repeatedly yawned and laughed, making light of the situation. Since then, Nash has pled guilty to ending Miss Lee's life. His sentencing is scheduled for the 30th of this month, and according to the DA's office, he's expected to receive 30 years to life. "Christina did nothing wrong," said the president of the CCB Association, Justin Yu. "The only mistake she made was to move to New York City. Our city allowed her life to be taken away. Crime has no consequence here." Unfortunately, incidents like this are far from unheard of. I'm reminded of the Sillin stalker case, which I mentioned in my Lee Uni overview. The potential victim was extremely fortunate. Her door automatically locked just before an opportunistic stranger could force his way inside. Sadly, Christina wasn't so lucky. So, to all of my audience, please stay vigilant when moving through transitional spaces, even in the perceived safety of your own apartment buildings. This final entry takes us just over the Canadian border into tranquil Halton Hills, a small, vibrant town about 45 kilometers outside of Toronto, renowned for its picturesque downtown, green spaces, and overall livability. With plenty of art galleries, some of the best regional shops and restaurants in the country, and an extremely low crime rate, the primary population centre of Georgetown is a magnet for wealthier folks looking for a peaceful life away from the bustle of the big city. And yet, homeowners on one of the community's sleepiest residential streets were awoken in the early hours of February 17th, 2021 by an ear-shattering sound. An explosion that occurred at 76 Hidden Lake Trail. Firefighters arrived to fight the blaze, and while doing so, they made a grim discovery. In the garage were the smouldering remains of the homeowners, 56-year-old Christina Rerak and 59-year-old Andrzej Rerak. A well-liked, hard-working couple. Christina was the Vice President of Operations at Road Transportation, and Andrzej was a manager at the Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company of Canada. They had both been making retirement plans and were preparing for the next chapter of their lives together, a chapter they would never get to enjoy. While inspecting the charred ruins of the home, the Ontario Fire Marshal quickly realised that the explosion hadn't occurred accidentally as everyone assumed. Someone had intentionally set the house ablaze. Prompted by the OFM's findings, the coroner conducted their own investigation and determined that Christina and Andrzej had both been killed before the fire began. On February 19th, Halton Regional Police's homicide squad took over the case, and shortly thereafter released images of a vehicle of interest, one seen fleeing the scene in the early hours. The authorities also appealed to local residents, asking them to come forward with any dashcam or surveillance footage captured along Hidden Lake Trail. The homeowners opposite the Rerex just so happened to have a security camera on the front of their property, and when they heard about that appeal, they decided to examine the footage. In the video, which was captured the evening before the fire, Christina is seen pulling into a garage at 6:24 p.m. A shadowy figure emerges from the darkness and crouches beside her car. Christina exits the vehicle, oblivious to the intruder watching her. The garage door closes, trapping the Rerex inside their own home with their soon-to-be killer. Neither Christina nor her husband were ever seen alive again. The camera didn't pick up anything else suspicious until 5:27 a.m, when the garage suddenly exploded. It wouldn't be until March 26, 2021, that they finally tracked down the man in this footage. 27-year-old Harrison Brown, a man with no prior record. Brown was an employee of Road Transportation, the company where Christina worked as Vice President of Operations. In the weeks leading up to the slayings, Brown had allegedly got into several conflicts at work, and Christina had instructed him to work from home. Her reprimand is cited as the catalyst for Brown's murderous rage. Brown began tracking Christina's movements using a GPS device which he covertly placed on her vehicle. As such, he knew exactly when she'd arrive at her 76 Hidden Lake Trail home on February 16th. Brown was there waiting as early as 4:36 p.m. that afternoon, and was ready to strike at 6:24 p.m. when she pulled into the garage. He then snuck in behind her vehicle, and, once the garage doors closed, confronted Christina and took her life using a blade. He then bludgeoned and killed Andrzej, who was already inside the home. Brown remained at the residence until 9:04 p.m. He then returned to his vehicle, which was parked a few streets away, and drove to his Mississauga home. Brown would return to the Rerex home in the early hours and cause an explosion. A broken knife covered in the Rerex DNA was found in Brown's garage. Police also discovered the GPS software Brown had used to track Christina's vehicle on his laptop and phone, along with satellite images of the Rerex house. Additional evidence placed Brown's cell phone in the Hidden Lake Trail area at the time of the murders, and again when the fire was set. In the face of mounting evidence, Brown pled guilty to 2 counts of first degree and 1 count of arson. Justice Clayton Conlon took that as proof of Brown's remorse, but also acknowledged that his actions were horrific and pre-planned. On December 1st, 2023, the judge sentenced him to life in prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 25 years. Thank you very much for listening. I'd like to thank all of my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Modest Bulbasaur, Alana Pons, Asia Mina, Azriel Warakai, Chief Gochwake, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Sai Wazao, Fanzerus Papyrus, Farewell Tattoos Jack Sefel, Gina Valera, Hamish, Ian Billock, Misty Blue Longi, Peter Logdrach, TNS Mum, Terry Ford, Hamish K, LJB, Nefus 1988, And Itai Alon, thank you so much for your continued support. Trust is a hard thing to come by in this world, as can be seen when looking into this first bizarre case. 2011, Japan. 27-year-old Mayumi Arashi was at home with her father, her sister, and her 18-month-old baby. At one point in the afternoon, she became visibly flustered and uncomfortable. She quickly made her way out the front door, saying that she had plans to meet an old classmate of hers. Day became night, and the young mother still hadn't returned home. Worried about her well-being, her family began searching for her. Mayumi's sister, Yoko, contacted the former classmate Mayumi said she was meeting. Lo and behold, no such meeting had taken place, and the classmate said that the two of them had never agreed to meet to begin with. Mayumi had lied. But why? Later that evening, Yoko discovered a note left by Mayumi. She brought it to the attention of the police. The note mentioned a man, known to the media as A. It read as follows: "To my family, I've been betrayed by A. This could be my punishment for betraying my husband. I'm sorry." What on earth was this cryptic message supposed to mean? What was Mayumi hinting at? An affair of some kind? How had this A betrayed her? So many questions raised by such a short note. In addition to finding this message, Yoko also stated that she had received a call from A himself. Apparently, he claimed to have met with Mayumi in the afternoon when she disappeared, and said that he wanted to go to jail if Mayumi ever turned up dead. Another cryptic clue. Was A trying to express that he felt guilty if Mayumi killed herself? Or was he hinting at the fact that he had killed her? The next morning, the police were able to track down A. They saw him walking into a forested area carrying 2 cartons of juice. They pursued him into the woods, but lost track of him. They haven't been able to find him since. It definitely seemed like something sinister had happened to Mayumi, be that suicide, abduction, or murder. Still, at least the case was progressing. That was mostly thanks to Yoko, who, up to this point, had collected most of the clues. Then, the mystery took an unexpected turn. The case blew up on the internet after an interview with Mayumi's father was posted by a Japanese news station. It wasn't what he said in the interview that made it go viral. It's what was spotted in the background. There, posted on the wall behind Mayumi's father, was a note. The note was in Mayumi's handwriting. It read, "Don't trust what Yoko says." Nobody knows what this mysterious note is referring to, or why it was put there. It wasn't addressed during the interview, and apparently the news team didn't even notice it, despite it being clearly visible. It's difficult to find sources for this case which aren't in Japanese, but there are some interesting theories being discussed online. Whatever the case, it's obvious that somebody's lying, and at least one member of Mayumi's family knows more about her disappearance than they're letting on. Texas. Good food, blue skies, and huge open spaces with patchy cell signal. It was August 8th, 2013, just before midnight. After an argument with his wife, 26-year-old Brandon Lawson left his home in San Angelo. Needing some time to cool off, he hopped in his truck and began the journey to his father's house. He would never make it to his destination. Brandon ran out of gas on Highway 277 near Bronte. Stuck there without any options, he called up his brother Kyle, saying that he needed a lift to the nearest gas station. Kyle and his girlfriend agreed to help Brandon out and began making their way to him. For some unknown reason, Brandon didn't wait for his brother in his vehicle. Instead, he ended up in an undisclosed field. Then, he made this 911 call.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. The staple just pushed some guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. Got chasing to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
The exact transcript of the call is up for debate, and it's particularly hard to make out what he's trying to say at the beginning. Some think he's saying that a state trooper pulled some guys over, and others distinctly hear the word sniper. It definitely sounds as if there's someone else with Brandon as well. One thing does become clear when analysing the audio though. In the background of the clip, there are at least 2 audible gunshots.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
The police eventually arrived at the scene, along with Brandon's brother, Kyle. Brandon's truck had been left at a crooked angle on the road, posing a serious hazard. It seemed as if he had left in a hurry. Whatever had happened to Brandon, he was still alive at this point. Kyle received a call from his desperate brother. The signal kept going in and out, making it difficult to understand what Brandon was trying to say. What Kyle did understand, though, was that his brother was in a field 10 minutes up the road, and that he was bleeding. Things may have gone very differently that night, had a simple misunderstanding been avoided here. You see, the police weren't at the scene because of the call Brandon had made to 911. They were there because of another caller who had complained about his truck in the road. Kyle himself had no idea his brother was in danger. He thought that Brandon was hiding from the police since he had an outstanding warrant from 2 years ago. As such, he thought that his brother was bleeding because he had scratched himself on a bush and made no mention of the call to the deputies he was standing with. After some time, the lawmen drove off, saying that they'd have the vehicle towed in the morning. Kyle and his girlfriend spent some time searching for Brandon, but found no trace of him. They figured he'd gone off to a gas station. It wasn't until the next morning that everyone realized Brandon was missing. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. The money in his bank account hasn't been touched, and his cell phone has been completely inactive. From what I've heard, the area around Bronte is known for being a bit of a no-man's land. Did Brandon witness something he wasn't supposed to? Some sort of cartel activity? It's possible. Others think that he was high on drugs, hence why in the call he seems to make very little sense at the beginning. Then there are those who think that he's the victim of a police cover-up. The land he disappeared on is owned by the sheriff, whose wife also runs the local newspaper. The sheriff is not allowing any more searches on his land, and Brandon's name rarely crops up in the paper. If he did indeed say that a state trooper pulled some guys over at the beginning, Is it possible that, in some way, the authorities are involved in his disappearance? Well, whoever Brandon did run into that night, he was more scared of them than going to jail. Hence why he specifically asked the operator for the cops, despite his outstanding warrant. Whoever Brandon did run into that night, and whatever they did with him, we'll likely never know. This entry is a little bit different to the others. The evidence is a video of the entire crime, taken by the perpetrators themselves. For reasons that will become obvious, I'm only going to describe the footage rather than show it. In 2015, a mobile phone was found in the back of a Fijian taxi. On it was an extremely disturbing video, taken somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The found footage was then posted online. In the video, we can see at least 4 unarmed men floating in the sea. Some of them cling to an upturned wooden boat. The men are surrounded by a number of large tuna fishing vessels. They're screaming and shouting as the men swim for their lives. To begin with, it's not obvious why. Then, over the ship's loudspeaker, a chilling command. Shoot. Guns are cocked and bullets fired. One by one, the men in the water are picked off by those on the ships. One of the victims even raises his hands in surrender, only to be shot in the head. He disappears under the water for a moment, and then bobs back up to the surface, the ocean around him turning a dark shade of red. When all of the men in the water are dead, the killers pose for a selfie. Prosecutions for sea crimes like this are extremely rare. Some estimate it to be less than 1%. According to maritime security officials, hundreds are killed at sea every year for that reason. Looking at the size of the boats in the video, there must have been dozens of witnesses on board. Despite this, the killings went unreported. As of right now, the identity of the killers remains unknown, as does their motive for killing their defenseless victims. This could have been a territorial dispute, the settling of a grudge, maybe even the execution of a group of pirates. One thing's for definite though, this was murder. You can find the video quite easily online, but I seriously suggest you don't go looking for it. As you can imagine, it's quite graphic in places. "32 years ago, the body of a disabled pensioner was fished from the Darling River in southeast Australia. The dead man's name was Ali Somers, and he was riddled with bullet wounds. He'd been shot above each of his eyes, once in the back of the head, and in several other areas of his body. This wasn't just any old murder. This was an execution. But why would anyone feel the need to kill a decrepit old man in such a violent fashion, and then so callously toss his body into the water? This seemed more like a mob hit than anything else. But Ali had no connection to organized crime, nor did he appear to have any real enemies. By all accounts, he was a family man, a pillar of his local community, and the kind of guy who would help those in need. Still, we all harbor a few dark secrets, don't we? Some darker than others, I suppose. Ali was last seen outside a post office in Merbane at about 6:30 p.m. An eyewitness saw him arguing with a male and 2 females. What this argument was about remains unknown. These cockpit photos show what they looked like. The man and 2 women then drove off in a green Holden HQ with a white roof. It's believed that at some point after this argument, Ali was abducted. He was then taken interstate. The rest you can fill in with your imagination. The only other clue that the cops have been able to unearth is a mysterious photograph found in the glove box of Ali's car. The picture is of a mustachioed man in a tank top, smoking a cigarette. Nobody has ever been able to identify him. Not Ali's friends or family or any of the general public. In my opinion, he certainly bears a resemblance to the man Ali was seen arguing with. The police believe that Ali was probably abducted by someone he knew. Well, it certainly seems like he knew this guy, seeing as he kept a picture of him in his car. Like Ali, the man appears to be of Turkish descent. What connection could there have been between the two men? Did Ali have a dark past that came back to haunt him? Was he involved in something he shouldn't have been, but managed to keep it a secret from everyone he knew? Most importantly, who exactly is the elusive man in the photograph? All of these questions have remained unanswered for the past 3 decades, and unfortunately, that seems unlikely to change, even with a $100,000 reward up for grabs. Without a doubt, there are people in the community who know what led to the death of Mr. Somers, said Minister of Police Michael Gallagher. Whether those people come forward is another matter entirely. The year was 1961. Michael Rockefeller, member of the esteemed and powerful Rockefeller family, was a keen adventurer and ethnology enthusiast. Despite living an extremely privileged and comfortable life back in the States, the young Rockefeller had become restless. He craved, no, needed a change of scenery, and where better, he thought, than one of the most remote places on the planet, Netherlands, New Guinea. While on an expedition studying the Asmat people who lived there, Rockefeller's boat was swamped and overturned about 3 miles from the coast. The 2 guides on board swam back to get help, leaving Rockefeller and his companion, Rene Vessing, to cling to the boat and wait for rescue. This rescue was slow in coming. After being stranded for 2 days at sea, the pair had drifted approximately 12 miles from the shoreline. Despite this, Rockefeller decided to take his chances. He jumped in the water and made for dry land. His companion was rescued the next day, but despite an intensive search and rescue effort, Rockefeller was never seen or heard from again. At the time, this was a major headline, and as such, there's been a huge amount of speculation over the years. The mystery is what happened to him. Well, the obvious answer is that he either drowned or died from exposure. Given that he was 12 miles from the shore, that makes a lot of sense. But Rockefeller was in great shape, and was still very young, only 23 when he went missing. Many believe that he made it to dry land, only to be captured by the Asmat people. Since headhunting and cannibalism were practiced by the tribe, it's thought that he may well have been killed and eaten. Indeed, there does appear to be quite a lot of evidence supporting that. One thing's for certain though, Michael Rockefeller died that day in 1961. Everybody agrees on that. That is, everybody agreed on that, until a piece of video footage that was filmed in 1969 recently resurfaced. It was captured close to where Rockefeller would have landed had he made it to shore. The footage shows 17 cannibal war canoes making their way across the water. For a brief moment, one member of the tribe stands out, his face partly covered by blue war paint. Could this be Rockefeller, the accomplished canoeist who wore a beard? Is it possible that he was accepted by the tribe and adopted their ways to survive? There are, of course, many skeptics, saying that the Asmat people would have definitely eaten an outsider. There are also those who say that this could just be an albino member of the tribe. Still, this image gives some credence to the theory that Rockefeller survived his ordeal. If this is indeed Rockefeller, is it possible that he could have been saved? after 8 years, would he have wanted to be? It's unlikely the young man's fate will ever be definitively proven, but this photo definitely makes the mystery more intriguing. Just last month in Khabarovsk, East Siberia, a large bag was discovered, washed up on a small island in a river. It was discovered by fishermen in the area, who noticed that something suspicious was poking out of it. Inside, they found 54 severed human hands. Of course, when such a morbid discovery is made, the inevitable slew of theories start getting bounded around. Some people speculate that the hands were being collected by a Russian serial killer. Others think that Chinese gangsters are responsible, since the hands were discovered a mere 20 miles from the Chinese border. A few even believe that the local Russian government is somehow involved. Perhaps the most gruesome theory, though, is that a syndicate of organ harvesters have been killing people, stealing their innards, and then hiding the severed hands of their victims so that the bodies can't be identified via their fingerprints. Officially, the Russian police have stated that the hands are simply from a forensic lab. In the biggest understatement of the century, they say that the hands were inappropriately disposed of. They also stressed that nothing nefarious was going on. Despite this reassurance, many Russian netizens remain unconvinced by this explanation. They believe that the handling of the appendages isn't in keeping with how a forensic lab would operate, and that the bag was too suspiciously placed to not be criminal. The hands appear to have been stripped of their fingerprints. However, the local authorities have said that one hand still has an identifiable set. They're currently being analysed. As of right now, nobody is certain who the hands belong to, or why exactly they were left on the small island in the first place. Hopefully, after the surviving set of prints have been examined, we'll have a conclusive answer. This is the Haiku Staircase in Oahu, Hawaii. To locals, it's ominously known as the Stairway to Heaven. Built in 1942, the perilous trail consists of nearly 4,000 steps and leads climbers to the top of the Ko'olau mountain range. It's closed to the public, the entrance blocked and guarded. Still, that doesn't stop the occasional thrill seeker from sneaking onto the structure. One such adventurer was Dalem Pua, better known as Moke. On the 27th of February 2015, the 18-year-old left his grandmother's house, saying that he planned to go hiking. She warned her grandson to stay away from the Stairway to Heaven. She'd seen on the news that it was a forbidden trail. But you know how teenagers react when you tell them not to do something. At 11 AM, Moke texted her a picture from, you guessed it, the Stairway to Heaven. He'd disregarded her warning and was making his way up the lonely trail. Not a wise move, she thought, but at least he was staying in contact. As he ascended the mountain, he continued to update his social media pages and sent his family pictures of his journey to the top. Unfortunately, it seems he didn't make it all the way up. Moke sent this one final picture to his family. After that, all communication ceased. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. When his family realized he was missing, they immediately contacted the authorities. The Navy and the Honolulu Fire Department combed the area thoroughly. After an arduous 5-day search, they found no trace of the young man. He had simply vanished off the face of the earth. Well, that's no mystery, you might be saying to yourself. The boy must have just fallen from the mountain on his way up. Indeed, that's what everyone initially thought. The thing is, he wasn't that far up the mountain when he took his last picture. He wasn't in an area that was difficult to search. And he wasn't alone. Did you notice anything unusual in Moke's last picture? After examining it in greater detail, investigators spotted something out of place. There, hidden in the bushes, was the shape of a crouching man. The question is, who is he? Was this just another adventurer on his way to the top? Some guy who was out exploring the area? Because of the way the man's crouched and partially hidden by the foliage, many people believe that he has something to do with Moke's disappearance. It's certainly easy to see how people can draw that conclusion. Moke made no mention of the man in the final message to his family. He may not have even realized that someone was following him up the mountain. Whoever this man is, he's yet to reveal his identity to the police, despite their best efforts to track him down. More than likely, he's innocent of any wrongdoing. But why hasn't he come forward? At the very least, he must have seen Moke in the moments leading up to his disappearance. Does he not want to admit that he was on the forbidden trail? Whatever the case, if Moke did die accidentally on the mountain, his body still remains unfound. Volunteers occasionally groom the area in search of his remains. Hopefully, his family can find closure. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Well, this was an interesting little collection. I tried to cover some mysteries which haven't really been done before. Hopefully you hadn't heard of these ones. It's getting a little tricky to find mysteries that haven't been covered, especially with so many horror creators on the site nowadays. If you happen to come across any interesting mysteries which haven't really been talked about all that much, then please do tip me off, send me an email. I'd really appreciate that. Coming up this Sunday, I have a marathon to run in support of Teenage Cancer Trust, so don't expect to hear from me before then, but after that I'll be back to making videos, and hopefully my legs will recover very quickly. If you'd like to support me on this, then you can find a link down below in the description to my donation page, and all of that money will go to helping teenagers suffering with cancer. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, be sure to smash that like button, or I'll smash you, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Until then guys, you all stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark. July 1974. The body of an unknown woman was discovered just off the side of the road in the Race Point dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. Since nobody came forward to identify her, and since the police had no idea who she was given the nickname Lady of the Dunes. Whoever she was, she had obviously been murdered. 2 sets of footprints led to her body. Cherished by millions around the globe, and still going strong to this day, Unsolved Mysteries is a docuseries that explores all things cryptic and creepy. Since the show's first episode back in 1987, the various hosts have covered thousands of mysteries of every kind. Some of these cases have since been solved. Others remain unanswered. In Volume 2 of this series, we'll again be revisiting a handful of the darkest and most intriguing stories covered during the show's most classic era, including any details that have emerged since their segments aired. But before we dive into the mysteries, let's try and solve the biggest mystery of them all. Why you haven't already downloaded today's sponsor, Raid: Shadow Legends. It's the game where you collect, level up, and gear up an array of amazing champions, and then form them into powerful teams to take on tough yet rewarding challenges. Challenges like the Hydra, one of Raid's toughest bosses. This bad boy has multiple heads to chop down, each with unique abilities. The head of Blight is the king of poisons and leeches, and crushes your champions with his poison cloud. If you're looking to destroy him quickly, which you should be, then fire's the key, so make sure one of your warriors has a HP burn. Then there's the head of Wrath, and trust me, this one gets aggressive. It can weaken and taunt your team, which doesn't sound too bad. But here's the kicker. After you hit it 15 times, its damage triples, so it's imperative you choose champions that can hit hard with a single strike. For all you new players out there, now's one of the best times to join Raid. You can get your hands on Stag Knight, one of the best epic champions in the whole game, as well as a skin designed by JonTron himself. Just use the promo code JTSkin before October 7th. Even if you're a returning player, you can still get Stag Knight and his skin through an in-game event. And here's another freebie, a legendary champion, Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the Monkey King from Chinese mythology. He's a real monster in the arena, and getting your hands on him couldn't be easier. Simply log in on 7 different days between now and October 23rd, and this free legendary is yours. With all this and more coming to Raid, you'd be crazy not to join in the fun. Use my link in the description, or scan my QR code on screen to help out the channel and get some amazing bonuses. We're talking an epic champion, Drake, energy refills, a skill tome, and an XP booster. So take up arms and join me in-game under the name Lazy Masquerade, and if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. Remember to click my link in the description, and I'll see you on the battlefield. It was July 9th, 1988, and 49-year-old Richard Mason decided to take his 22-year-old son-in-law, Airman First Class, Kenneth Red Griffith, along with Kenneth's 23-year-old squadron buddy, Earl Smock, out for an ATV ride through the rural outskirts of Signal Mountain, a peaceful town just a stone's throw from Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was scorching hot that time of year, the dog days of summer, as one report put it, and July 9th was no exception. So, as well as taking in the natural beauty of the Tennessee backwoods, the three men were also eager to cool off in the affectionately named Blue Hole, a swimming spot that they had all heard about. They said goodbye to their loved ones at Richard's house and set off northwards on their three-wheelers. It was the last time they were seen alive. When the three men didn't return home that night, Richard's wife and daughter started to fear for their well-being. Richard was an experienced hunter who knew the mountain like the back of his hand, and Kenneth and Earl were military men with extensive survival training. They certainly hadn't gotten lost, that was for sure. Reasoning that their husbands and friend had decided to camp out in nature overnight, they brushed off their concerns and went to bed. But when the trio still hadn't returned by dawn, they knew that something terrible must have happened. Richard's family immediately reported them missing, and a search and rescue mission was launched on the morning of July 10th. Shortly thereafter, a Signal Mountain resident happened upon an eerie scene on Roberts Camp Road, approximately 5 miles from where the men had departed from, and 9 miles from their destination. There, at the base of a bluff, lay 3 ATVs. 2 of them were splattered with an ominous red liquid. Bone chips were recovered from one of them. Investigators arrived on the scene and made the grim connection between the ATVs and Kenneth, Earl, and Richard. And their concern for the men's well-being only deepened when one Signal Mountain resident approached them and told them that he had heard 3 to 4 gunshots between 6 PM and 8 PM the night prior, coming from an area known as Helicon Gate, the entrance to Blue Hole. The next morning, investigators scoured around Helicon Gate and noticed peculiar ATV tire tracks on the ground and the presence of green flies in the area, a type of insect attracted to decaying flesh. During their search, a patch of blood on a fallen branch and suspicious drag marks further fueled their suspicions. Nearby, they found a pocket knife which belonged to Kenneth. Brain tissue was also found at the scene. It was disturbingly obvious to investigators that the 3 men had been slain at Helicon Gate. The perp had then dumped their ATVs at the bottom of the bluff several miles from the scene and hid the three men's bodies in a separate location that they had yet to stumble upon. 2 agonizing days later, another local noticed a foul smell emanating from an illegal trash dump 11 miles from Helicon Gate. Green flies were swarming around the dump, and she returned home and asked her husband to investigate. There, her husband found the lifeless bodies of Kenneth, Earl, and Richard. Each of them had met a horrific end, cut down by shotgun blasts. Using the evidence they had collected, detectives pieced together the events of that fateful night that the men went missing. The 3 of them had set off from Richard's home and made their way along a dirt track through Signal Mountain, driving in single file. It appeared as if the victims had been ambushed by someone at Helicon Gate. Having flagged the men down, this unknown man raised his shotgun and began opening fire. The first blast struck Kenneth in the left side of the head. The second hit Richard in the chest. The perp then leveled his weapon at Earl and fired a shot into his right shoulder. Earl managed to get off his 3-wheeler and make a break for it, but as he reached the tree line, a 4th and final blast struck him in the side, piercing his heart. With the help of at least one other individual, the madman responsible then set about hiding the evidence of his actions. He and his accomplice, or accomplices, orchestrated the removal of the ATVs, returned to the scene to retrieve the bodies, and then heartlessly discarded them in the trash dump. Detectives believed that the killer wanted the bodies to be discovered before the actual crime scene was found, effectively obscuring the truth. Had the bodies been found just 2 days earlier, the chilling crime at Helicon Gate might never have been revealed. The detectives certainly had a lot of evidence to work with in this case. Not only had they retrieved bountiful physical evidence, but several eyewitnesses had also come forward and revealed further clues. For example, one witness reported seeing 2 people in a Jeep Scrambler on the same night that the trio vanished, unloading 3 ATVs on Roberts Mill Road. That same night, a motorist encountered a frantic woman attempting to stop traffic near Roberts Mill Road, just a quarter of a mile from where the ATVs were later discovered. This woman, who had parked her Chevy Nova across the road so nobody could pass, told the motorist that there had been an accident and said they should turn around and find a different route. It began to sound as if the perpetrator did have accomplices after all. The most unsettling aspect of this case, though, was the belief that the killer, or killers, were local residents, known to the small and tightly knit Signal Mountain community. At the time this case was first covered on Unsolved Mysteries, back in January of 1990, it remained unresolved, though host Robert Stack did hint that the man responsible was known to both the locals and the authorities, but that they were powerless to act. He opened the segment with these chilling words. In our next story, the police have received anonymous calls from people who claim to know the identity of the killer, but they will not testify until the suspect is safely behind bars. The reason is simple: fear. Update. On April 15th, 1997, more than 7 years after this episode of Unsolved Mysteries was broadcast, a turning point in the Signal Mountain mystery finally occurred when 50-year-old Frank Castile was charged with 3 counts of first degree. Suspicion had loomed over him since the beginning of the investigation, primarily because he owned land near where the slayings had occurred and was also known to own a Jeep Scrambler. However, it was a combination of fresh fibre evidence and the emergence of several witnesses that breathed new life into this case. Some of these witnesses felt emboldened to come forward following the broadcast of the investigation on Unsolved Mysteries, an episode which had, for obvious reasons, gripped the community. One particularly crucial tip came from the female driver of the Chevy Nova herself, the woman who had been stopping motorists from driving down Roberts Mill Road. As it turns out, she wasn't an accomplice of Frank Castile's, and her actions that night had been completely coincidental. Her boyfriend's car had simply broken down on the road, close to where the ATVs were being dumped, and she didn't initially come forward due to her partner's previous prison record, fearing he may be wrongly accused of the slayings. After the episode aired, another tipster led investigators to the most vital witness of all, a woman named Marie Hill, who was having a not-so-secret affair with Frank Castile, one that began in 1996. Marie had received letters from Castile's wife, Susie, which stated that he was a murderer and had taken the lives of Kenneth, Earl, and Richard. Marie showed these letters to Castile, expecting him to laugh them off, but instead, he confiscated the letters and burned them, telling Marie to never speak about their contents to anyone. It was then that Marie decided to cooperate with authorities. She allowed her home to be bugged in a bid to extract a confession from Castile, the plan being that when the two were alone, she'd broach the topic of the Signal Mountain slayings again and get him to spill the beans on tape. However, during their meeting, Castile's wife, Susie, unexpectedly burst into Marie's home, unaware of the operation in progress. On the tape, an angry Susie, outraged by her husband's affair, could be heard saying, "I've stood by you through one of the worst things we could ever go through. I had myself dragged down to the station and fingerprinted because of what you've done. You see, Marie, there's a law that I don't have to testify against my husband. But if we were divorced, then I'd have to testify against him." "That should really scare me, I suppose," replied Frank. "No, I don't think so. Because you know I wouldn't do it." During their heated 3-hour argument, Susie told Marie that she had assisted her cheating husband with something on the mountain 8 years prior, but neither she nor Castile confessed to anything specific. When questioned by the authorities, Castile told them that on the night of the slayings, he and his wife had spent the night together at a campsite on his property, right alongside Helicon Gate, though neither of them had heard any gunshots ring out. And yet, despite his alibi, numerous witnesses later came forward and reported seeing his Jeep Scrambler parked near the bluff where the ATVs were discovered, and near the dump site where Kenneth, Earl, and Richard's remains were found. The morning after the grisly events, another witness noticed a woman at a local car wash, frantically washing blood out of the back of a Jeep. She explained it came from a pig that she had taken to the slaughterhouse, but the witness knew that the local abattoir was closed on Sundays and became extremely suspicious. They recorded the license plate of the Jeep. It was registered to Frank Castile. Later that same day, another witness, coincidentally Kenneth's brother, Lee, accepted a ride from Castile in his Jeep and noticed that the vehicle's rear was soaking wet, despite the fact that it hadn't rained for quite some time. On the night of the incident, it's believed that the 3 victims had ventured to the swimming hole situated on the edge of Frank Castile's property. Though the Blue Hole was considered public land, Castile was still protective of it, and had a history of threatening individuals who drove there, maintaining a logbook which catalogued every perceived trespasser. He would even hold these would-be swimmers at gunpoint and make them sign the logbook before releasing them, taking note of their names, phone numbers, and license plate details. Some even recounted instances where he had aimed his shotgun menacingly at their heads. A few weeks before the incident on Signal Mountain, Castile had explicitly warned a group of trespassers to stay off his property, or at least what he considered his property, and even fired a blast above one of their heads. He told a friend of his that he was ready to kill the next person who set foot on his land without permission, and even expressed specific annoyance with ATV riders, ominously hinting that he may have to shoot one. In May 1998, Frank Castile stood trial for the slayings of Kenneth, Earl, and Richard. He was found guilty and sentenced to life behind bars. Although a new trial was granted due to the exclusion of vital evidence, he was once again convicted in 2003. Castile would have been eligible for parole in 2024 had his dark tale not come to an end on May 25, 2019, when he passed away in prison at the age of 71, having never repented for what he had done. As for his wife, Susie Castile, she never faced any consequences for her actions. The Castile's dark legacy left an indelible mark on the Signal Mountain community, a haunting reminder of the secrets and fears hidden within small, tight-knit circles, and a chilling example of the horrors that some people are willing to commit, for no real reason, whatsoever. A mere 20 miles northwest of Cincinnati lies the quiet farming community of Fernald, Ohio, a place where the secret is chilling as it is captivating. For decades, the town's livelihood revolved around the Feed Materials Production Center, otherwise known as NLO, a 1,050-acre facility concealed behind a shroud of government ownership. Unbeknownst to the public, NLO was a clandestine Department of Energy operation that from 1953 to 1989 covertly processed high-grade uranium for the nation's nuclear arsenal.
When I was hired in there, they said that it was a low-level radiation plant, and that you didn't have anything to worry about. There was nothing back there that would bother you, and just go on about your business, not to tell anybody what you were doing, and everything would be fine.
Little did Harry know that fine would soon turn into a nightmare. The year was 1984, and NLO was thrust into the spotlight by a catastrophic event. A factory accident had unleashed a torrent of radioactive smoke into the atmosphere, shattering the facility's veil of secrecy. An investigation laid bare the grim truth. Over the years, NLO had discharged more than 200 tons of radioactive dust into the air and local water sources. The aftermath of this environmental disaster left the community distrusting their government like never before. But amidst this turmoil, a shadowy mystery unfolded. Just 6 months before the NLO disaster, David Box, an employee of the plant, had met with a grisly end within its walls. Dave, a dedicated worker and loving father, held an important position at the facility. He was a pipe fitter, and it was his responsibility to inspect and maintain the factory's sensitive equipment. For example, he had to make sure that the safety pumps and dust collectors were working properly. But evidently, Dave was less than impressed by the quality of the equipment inside the plant. At the time he was employed, the machinery was already 30 years old, and the pipes were cracked and leaking. He'd often warned his colleagues to avoid certain dust collectors that were more radioactive than they should be. He was a quiet man by nature, but was willing to speak up for the greater good. He'd once encountered a co-worker sleeping on the job and reported him to his superiors, leading to the man being suspended. On the night of his demise, Dave followed his nightly ritual, meeting co-worker Harry Easterling in the parking lot of a restaurant before their joint graveyard shift, which ran from midnight to 8 AM. The pair lived in Loveland, about 30 miles west of NLO, so carpooling made a lot of sense. That night, Dave got into my truck, said Harry, recounting the events of June 20th, 1984. We left, had a little conversation on the way to work. He talked about an upcoming vacation with his kids, and how he bought a new lunchbox for work. Everything seemed to be normal. Harry and Dave were among the few employees who worked overnight at the plant. After the production lines had shut down, only maintenance workers and security personnel were allowed on site. Upon arrival, Harry and Dave went to the maintenance room for their work assignments. That night, Dave was assigned to the pump in Plant 8. He opened his toolbox, left his keys in the padlock, and left the lock and the keys on top of the toolbox. An important detail worth remembering. Later on during their shift, at approximately 4 AM, another worker saw Dave and a supervisor in a parked pickup truck outside in the lot. According to this witness, Dave and this supervisor appeared to be having a serious discussion, though clearly one they didn't want anyone else to hear. An hour later, at 5 AM, that same witness bumped into Dave doing his rounds, and Dave appeared to be acting normally. Strangely though, he noted that Dave was making his way to Plant 4 rather than Plant 8 where he had been assigned. That was the last time that Dave Box was seen alive. As night became morning, Harry Easterling realized something. He hadn't seen Dave for hours. At approximately 7 that morning, we had a safety meeting in the conference room in Plant 4, Harry recalled. We showed up for the meeting, but Dave wasn't there. I walked back to the maintenance building, put my tools away, and noticed Dave's toolbox was still open. His keys were still on top, still in the padlock. I thought he was probably working overtime, so I went in, made a few calls, but still couldn't locate him. I went back out and told the security guard at the desk that Dave hadn't come out. I was going home, and I'd meet him the next night at the restaurant. Well, that next evening rolled around, and Dave didn't show up for his carpool with Harry. Realizing that nobody had seen Dave since the night prior, Harry rushed to work and reported him missing to his supervisor. A search of the facility ensued, leading to an unsettling discovery. The plant record showed that at 5:15 AM, the furnace in Plant 6 had briefly dropped 28 degrees, indicating that something had been dropped into one of the vats. A small bone fragment was found resting on the lip of the Nusel vat, a salt bath about 4 feet wide and 10 feet long. It was filled with a slurry of sodium chloride and potassium chloride, which sweltered at 1,350 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so hot, it was impossible to get within 10 feet of it. It just looked like hell, Harry said, describing the Nusel vat. If you were to look down at hell, and there was a big hole in the ground, that's what it looked like. A big, open, red hole in the ground, like a volcano. While inspecting the Nusel vat, one worker noticed a mysterious, foul-smelling black sludge which had formed on top of the slurry. It took 3 full days for the molten liquid to cool and drain. On June 23rd, investigators found a set of keys which were strangely unincinerated at the bottom of the Nusel vat. They were Dave's. Along with the keys, they also found a melted steel toe from a boot, part of an eyeglass frame, parts of Dave's walkie-talkie, and a stainless steel wire that was looped together in 3 oddly connecting circles. There were also bone fragments, and what appeared to be a black impression in the shape of a human being. Dave Box was almost certainly dead, having entered the molten slurry. The initial theory was that he had accidentally slipped into the furnace's fiery maw. But there were 2 problems with that. Firstly, the record showed that Dave had fallen into the vat at 5:15 AM. But Harry had seen Dave's set of keys, the same ones found in the vat's waste, 2 hours later at 7:30 AM, resting atop his toolbox. So how had they ended up in the furnace? Secondly, it wouldn't have been possible for anyone to have fallen into the slurry. Even when in operation, a heavy, immovable concrete lid covered the Nusel vat. The only way for someone to enter it would have been to squeeze, or be forced, through a small opening, about the size of 2 notebooks. Some suggested that Dave had intentionally entered the vat in order to end his own existence, citing his recent divorce from his wife, but his family vehemently disagreed. They pointed to Dave's plans for the future, his recent purchases, and his meticulous financial preparations as proof he had no motive to unalive himself. And, again, given the temperature the vat was kept at, entering it willingly just doesn't seem like a realistic possibility. He'd have likely perished before he even had a chance to enter the slurry. Even if he had sprinted up the vat's ladder and jumped in, Dave, who was 6'1" and about 180 pounds, would have found it difficult to fit through its narrow opening. Former NLO employee David Day echoed that sentiment, insisting that homicide was the only possible explanation. He was probably lowered into the furnace, speculated Day. I can't think of any other way it could have happened. He, the Box family, and others believed that Dave was silenced because he knew too much, and was possibly on the brink of blowing the whistle on the alarming uranium releases from Plant 8, a revelation which would be brought to light just 6 months after Dave met his fate. Investigative reporter DC Cole agrees with that. I think he knew something. It's possible that he was a whistleblower, or was going to be a whistleblower. Plant 8 had released 4 times more radioactive contaminants into the environment than any other plant at the site. They killed him, then took his body back to Plant 6, where the furnace is. I'd hate to think that he was still conscious. I can't imagine a more horrible way to go than that. Some have even theorized that the looped stainless steel wire found in the furnace had been used to bind David's hands and feet. Despite an appeal by Robert Stack for information in March 1994, the mystery surrounding Dave Bock's end remains unresolved to this day. While some dismiss the notion of foul play, others believe a sinister cover-up continues to conceal the truth. His friend, Harry Easterling, hoped that one day someone would step forward to reveal the dark secrets hidden within NLO walls. Unfortunately, he's since passed away, having never conclusively known the truth about his friend's demise. In 1989, NLO ceased operations, but Dave's family still grapples with the impossibility of laying him to rest. His remains, tainted by toxicity, rest in a drum, stored alongside other radioactive materials at a Nevada test site. Born in 1971, high schooler Kathy Hobbs had grown up believing one morbid thing about her life: that it would end before her 16th birthday. It was a premonition she'd had about herself ever since her close childhood friend passed away from a heart condition. A curse that constantly played on her mind and left her in a perpetual state of dread. An otherwise bright and warm-hearted girl, Kathy did her best to escape those morose thoughts through reading, creative writing, and sketching, but they always crept back into her head. To alleviate her fears, Kathy and her family relocated to Las Vegas. There she made friends and appeared to adjust well to her new environment. However, as her 16th birthday approached, her fears resurfaced, causing her to isolate herself in her room and avoid leaving the house. She penned a poem regarding her demise and sketched an image depicting herself lying in a pool of red. She confided in her friends about a dream that she had been having, one in which she was slain by a man with a moustache and a baseball cap. She wrote secret letters to her family members, expressing her love for them, with instructions not to open them until after her demise. It was a very bleak point in her life. On the morning of her sweet 16, Kathy was pleasantly surprised to find herself, well, alive. The first thing she did was rush to her mother and proclaim, "I made it, Mum. I made it. I'm 16. I did it. I'm alive." From there on, Kathy began embracing a more typical teenage life. She rekindled her friendships, explored makeup and beauty products, and even aspired to become a beautician, with plans of opening a salon named Cat's Cuts. It seemed that she was indeed destined to reach adulthood. And yet, on the night of July 23rd, 1987, just 3 months after her 16th birthday, Kathy mysteriously vanished. At 11 p.m. that night, she had told her mother, Vivian, that she was heading to a late-night bookshop called Skaggs Alphabet. Vivian assumed that Kathy would go with one of her friends from their apartment complex, but none were available that night, so Kathy went alone. At around 3 a.m., Vivian woke up from a deep sleep, feeling as though she had been struck on the head. Following this strange experience, she felt a sense of peace that she couldn't quite comprehend. "All of a sudden," she explained, "I got a very peaceful feeling, and I thought thought, well, it's over now, and I fell back to sleep. Later that morning, Vivian went to wake Kathy up, but found her bed empty. Her daughter hadn't returned from the store the night prior. She immediately contacted the police. Kathy's disappearance garnered media attention, and volunteer groups joined the search efforts, yet no trace of her could be found. A Skaggs Alphabet employee confirmed selling Kathy a book on the night of her disappearance, and receipts verified the purchase at 11:17 p.m. She had made it to the store on Desert Inn Road and Maryland Parkway, but her movements after that remained a mystery. Surveillance cameras in the area hadn't captured anything of value, and despite the populated area, no witnesses came forward to say they had heard screams or seen anything suspicious. 9 days later, a hiker discovered Kathy's lifeless body in a remote field near Lake Mead, about an hour's drive from Las Vegas. There were tire tracks and 2 blood-covered rocks near her remains. The coroner determined that the 2 rocks had been used to crush her head. There were signs that she had been FA'd. On the way home from the store that fateful night, someone had forced her into their vehicle, driven her out to the middle of nowhere, and maliciously ended her life. Exactly 3 months after her disappearance, an anonymous informant called the Las Vegas PD and accurately described Kathy's last known location and attire on the night of her disappearance. The informant claimed that he had witnessed 2 men grabbing Kathy and forcing her into a vehicle. One of them had called the other Robbie.
Grabbed this girl in front of the store in Pasadena, Maryland. This is a few months ago. I've been out of town for a few months, and I read this down because she was screaming and they pulled her in the car. She was a very young girl wearing the white jacket and the pink pants. And the guy's name, he hollered to him, push her in the car, and his name was Robbie.
This informant hung up without providing his identity or contact details. Detectives traced the license plate number he had provided them, only to discover it didn't exist. Update. Kathy's segment aired on February 1st, 1989, during the first season of Unsolved Mysteries. Despite Robert Stack's pleas for the informant to come forward, he never did. However, even though the informant's identity remains unclear, and his admission likely a hoax, Kathy's case has since been solved. Years later, authorities connected her slaying to Michael Lee Lockhart, a death row inmate from Toledo, Ohio. In May 1987, Lockhart had stolen a blue Toyota Celica. 2 months later, he used that same vehicle to capture Kathy. Blue fibers found on her remains matched those found on the Toyota. Credit card receipts placed Lockhart in Las Vegas at the time of the slaying. And if all that wasn't enough, when investigators questioned him about Kathy, he admitted to taking her life. She was his first known victim, though obviously not his only one. By the time Lockhart was linked to Kathy's case, he had already been convicted of a series of slayings spanning Texas, Indiana, and Florida. This included taking the lives of Wendy Gallagher, 16, Jennifer Colauer, 14, and Officer Paul Halsey Jr., who had tried to arrest him for driving a stolen Chevy. Lockhart met his fate via lethal injection on December 9th, 1997.
For every mystery, there is someone somewhere who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone was watching. Perhaps it's you.
Before the video ends, a huge thank you to all of my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: Matt Fennell, George Lopez, Holly Lyons, Alex Greensall, Asia Mina, Asriel Warakai, Brad Hammer 33, Chief Kochuake, Colin Monsma, Connor Lothan, Sai Wazao, David Lyons, Doopsy, Gina Valera, Hamish, Ian Belloc, Infamous Sempapi, Monica Mendoza, Peter Logjurch, Ruth Vika Shindi, TNS Mum, Hamish K, Ellen Doloff, Itai Alon, Nephus1988, and Lydia Cumo. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Until next time, the devil's in the detail. I've covered both solved and unsolved mysteries extensively on this channel, and this time I thought it might be interesting to explore some of the mysteries that lie in the in-between. The cases that to a large extent have been solved, but still harbour a secret or two. Perhaps finding the answer to the mystery only led to more questions. Perhaps the motivations of those involved remain unknown. Or perhaps some other details are just beyond our understanding right now. Like a puzzle that's missing a single piece, the big picture of these mysteries might seem clear, but ultimately, they remain incomplete. Number 1. The Princess of Persia. One of the most interesting mysteries I've ever come across, with a dark twist that left the archaeological world stunned. It was the year 2000, and the police force in Pakistan received an unusual tip-off. A trio of men in the province of Baluchistan, right on the border with Iran, were trying to sell a very unusual antique on the black market. A real-life mummy from the ancient world. The price tag for this rare treasure? $11 million. Since they were clearly violating the Antiquities Act, the cops decided to pay them a little visit. The men claimed that they had purchased the relic from a man in Iran, and that they had no idea that what they were doing was illegal. Regardless, the group was arrested. The police then turned their attention to the mummy itself. It was encased in a sarcophagus, upon which there was an inscription. It read, "I am the daughter of the great King Xerxes. Mazareka protect me. I am Rudigoon, I am." Rudigoon, the daughter of King Xerxes. Anyone who likes their history will know that he wasn't a pharaoh of Egypt. He was the king of Persia from 486 to 465 BC. Some of you might know Xerxes from the movie 300, and yes, it's true, he was a real king, but it's safe to say that in reality, he wasn't a 10-foot tall demigod. Regardless, this was still a major find. After the news got out about the discovery, the archaeological community was abuzz with excitement. But not just because King Xerxes was such an important historical figure. You see, no mummy had ever been discovered that wasn't Egyptian. Up until this point, mummification was believed to be an exclusively Egyptian practice. If the corpse inside the sarcophagus really was an authentic Persian princess, then this discovery would completely change our understanding of the ancient world. Before anyone got too carried away and started rewriting the history books, some scientific examination had to be conducted. The authenticity of the mummy had to be confirmed after all. Archaeological experts were summoned to analyze the body inside the coffin. During this time, the governments of Iran and Pakistan broke out into a full-blown argument, fighting over which of their countries could claim ownership over Rudigun's body. They both wanted to be the nation associated with this unbelievable discovery. Iran, formerly Persia, said that because she was a Persian princess, she was rightfully theirs. The Pakistani government countered with the fact that she was seized in their country by their law enforcement. As such, she was now their property. This heated debate continued while experts tested the relic. They of course began by opening up the wooden sarcophagus. Inside, protected by a broken stone coffin, lay the embalmed remains of a female, 4 foot and 7 inches tall. This wasn't the body of a child, however. An X-ray of her bones showed that she had to be at least 21 at the age of her death. This seemed encouraging. People in the ancient world were shorter than those of us alive today. Indeed, more encouraging were the results of a detailed CT scan. The woman's brain and internal organs had been removed and replaced with a high-density material, just like an authentic mummy from the period. The sarcophagus also contained all the trimmings you'd expect, including real gold. The materials used to create the sarcophagus were then scrutinized. This is where everything started to unravel. The reed mat upon which she laid was proven to have been manufactured within the past 50 years. I'm not great with numbers, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't take us back as far as the BC era. What's more, the inscription on the outside of her wooden tomb was examined. More disappointment. Her name postdated her supposed death by several centuries and had been translated from Greek, not Persian. On top of all of that, tracings from a modern lead pencil could be found on the inside of the coffin. One final piece of damning evidence came from New York. A whole year prior to all of this, an expert at the Metropolitan Museum of Art received a set of photos of this exact same mummy. They were sent to him by an Iranian middleman. The group who sent him the photos wanted to sell the mummy to the museum for a hefty price. The expert quickly recognized from the photos that the relic wasn't authentic. In fact, he was able to deduce that the mummy's trappings had been made in modern-day Iran. This area of the world is well known for trying to make forgeries of antiques. The crooks who originally tried to sell the item on the black market had somehow got their hands on an authentic mummy from Egypt and tried to dress her up as a Persian to make more money. It was an impressive attempt at a forgery. The gang behind this had somehow gathered a goldsmith, a stonemason, and various other artisans in an attempt to pull the scam off. Despite the lengths they went to, however, they still made a number of schoolboy errors which thwarted them in the end. So, the mystery had been solved. The sarcophagus was a modern fake. True. The body inside wasn't that of King Xerxes' daughter. True. The whole thing had just been a get-rich-quick scheme. True. And the actual body really was a genuine Egyptian mummy. False. Here's where the plot really started to thicken. Though questions about the mummy's authenticity had been solved, an analysis of the mummified body itself only raised more questions in their place. Originally, the experts thought that the body really was a genuine mummy, since it had been so convincingly treated and preserved, and all of the organs had been removed. However, further examinations made one thing horrifyingly clear. The body was that of a modern woman. She could only have died in 1996. And what's more, she died violently. Her back had been broken by a blunt object which struck her from the right, and her neck was snapped at a 90-degree angle. Her spinal column had been snapped in two. Her organs were then removed very crudely. The brain removal, which was a very delicate procedure in ancient Egypt, had been a hack job. Whoever did this also made the mistake of removing the woman's heart, something that never would have been done during traditional Egyptian mummification. All of this happened within 24 hours of her death. And here lies the missing piece of this mystery's puzzle. Who was the woman in the sarcophagus, and who killed her? According to the original trio who tried to sell her on the black market, they had nothing to do with the woman's death. They simply bought the mummy as it was from someone else, who in turn bought it from someone else. Ultimately, the case went nowhere. The police determined that the dead woman was most likely from the Iranian-Pakistani border, but they've never been able to identify her. You'd have thought that someone who was only 4'7" in this day and age would have stood out in the area. Still, nothing was ever proven, and nobody was held responsible for her death. Since this case, 2 more so-called Persian princesses have turned up on the black market, both of them forgeries, and both of them containing real bodies. It seems likely that the same people are behind all this. Thus, this case remains a partially solved mystery. We may never know the real identity of the Persian princess, and her killers may never see justice for what they did to her. However, in 2008, she was finally laid to rest with proper burial rites. Nameless, yet undisturbed, no longer a piece of property. Number 2. This next entry revolves around an ongoing case, and is as bizarre as it is disturbing. In August of this year, Peter Madsen, a Danish engineer and inventor, invited freelance journalist Kim Wall aboard his homemade submarine, the UC-3 Nautilus. Though still young, she was already very accomplished and had pieces published in The Guardian, The New York Times, Vice, and Time magazine. Turned out that William hadn't dropped Henry off at the Super America gas station like he thought. Instead, he had accidentally dropped Henry. In August of this year, Peter Madsen, a Danish engineer and inventor, invited freelance journalist Kim Wall aboard his homemade submarine, the UC-3 Nautilus. Though still young, she was already very accomplished and had pieces published in The Guardian, The New York Times, Vice, and Time magazine. She had decided to write a piece on Madsen, who had built a number of functioning submarines in the past. A private ride on this midget sub would give Kim the chance to better understand the man behind the machine. They both set off on their voyage on August 10th at approximately 7 PM. The next day, Madsen returned, alone. Here's what happened. The pair were scheduled to return to harbour on the night they sailed off. When they failed to make it back, Kim's partner called for an emergency search operation. When the submarine finally did surface the next morning, it mysteriously sank 30 minutes later. Madsen had to be rescued from the water. Kim was nowhere to be found. When the police questioned Madsen about what happened, he said that he had dropped Kim off on an island prior to the submarine sinking. He said it sank because of a technical fault. They pressed him for more details. He then changed his story, saying that there had been an accident and that Kim had fallen overboard. He was arrested for negligent manslaughter later that day. The police suspected that Madsen had intentionally destroyed the vessel in an effort to hide evidence of foul play. The next day, Madsen changed his story again. Now he claimed that Kim hadn't somehow fallen off the submarine. Instead, he said that she died in an accident on board the vessel, and that he buried her body at sea as a gesture of respect. You might be thinking this story sounds a bit fishy, and you're not alone. The police didn't buy it either. They told Madsen that his machine had been investigated at the bottom of the harbour, and it was confirmed that it had been sunk deliberately. 12 days later, on August 23rd, something turned up at the bottom of the harbour that really put Madsen in hot water. It was the torso of a woman. No head, no legs. Through DNA analysis, it was identified as the torso of Kim Wall. Forensic tests showed that she had been deliberately mutilated. With the passing of time, Madsen's story had changed and become more detailed. In fact, just last month, he admitted that he did indeed dismember Kim Wall's body, but still maintained that she died as the result of an accident. In court on September 5th, he said that as he was holding the submarine hatch open, he lost his footing, causing it to hit Kim on the head. She then fell down a shaft to her death.